Searching for solutions to stop the violence in New Orleans decided to go out of state for answers.
They're focusing their attention on a city with similar crime, demographics, and a violence reduction model that seems to be working.
Tasha Robin has this special report, Battling for New Orleans.
Just in the month of January of 2023 alone, we lost 3 students, high school students, to violence.
Murder, armed robbery, mass shootings.
I guess he got shot in his book bag. The book bag was smoking and everything.
This is what's happening on the streets of Baltimore.
Carjackings, the robberies by juveniles, that's been a significant problem that we've seen.
1,124 miles away in New Orleans.
My wife almost got shot. It's crazy. It's nuts.
The same type of crime.
Somebody give me my baby, y'all.
2 cities.
And all they did was left out of their house this morning to attend school, and they're not going to return home.
Desperate for answers.
We're reactive here. We wait for something to happen, then we come out, oh, what's going on?
We have to chip away at the problem.
As New Orleans City Council member Helena Moreno searched for solutions, it was Baltimore's police chief who grabbed her attention.
Let's talk with Baltimore Police Commissioner Michael Harrison. He joins us now.
Harrison, the former superintendent of the New Orleans Police Department, was making national headlines about a year ago.
Initially, the work that he was doing around adding professionals to the Baltimore Police Department, what we call kind of civilianization.
Just as New Orleans was dealing with a depleted police force, Baltimore was losing officers too.
What he ended up doing is he started hiring more professionals to fill duties that a commissioned officer didn't necessarily have to do. So civilians writing police reports for nonviolent offenses, doing a lot of the paperwork type of duties. And in looking at that, I'm like, well, what can we do here?
This should be more perceived and referred to.
New Orleans council members conducted a study and figured out about 30% of an NOPD officer's workload could be supplemented by a civilian police worker.
But what we're looking for is action.
So back in August of last year,
7 yeas, no nays.
the council introduced the idea and passed the civilian policing ordinance.
But unfortunately, it just really has not been like a huge top priority. Now with interim police chief Woodfork, she's told me that it is a priority.
Civilianization is definitely the way to go. It pays dividends for everyone across the board.
Moreno says the council is working with the NOPD and civil service to break the barriers and begin hiring civilians. But she and the other council members wanted to know what else they could learn from Baltimore.
We took a trip to Washington, D.C. To talk, myself and Leslie Harris, to really sit down with the chief and talk about all different types of initiatives.
There, they learned crime plagues Baltimore in the same ways it does here.
A lot of the violence that we see is essentially a tennis match, back and forth and back and forth.
T.J. Smith, a former commander of the Baltimore Police and now the host of the podcast To Be More, explains how the city's experienced a serious uptick of murders since 2015.
That year, Baltimore skyrocketed to 343 murders, and that sustained level of violence has pretty much been intact since then.
Even with about 200,000 less people in New Orleans, 280 people were killed last year. That's a 131% increase since 2019, according to the Metropolitan Crime Commission. Back in Baltimore, Smith points to the alarming number of shootings as well.
Just an enormous amount of non-fatal shootings, average of about 700 non-fatal shootings per year as well.
New Orleans, 618 people shot last year.
It is important to note a recent study from
Council members learned Chief Harrison in Baltimore addressed the high crime rate there with a violence interruption model, a model used to address violent crime in 10 of the city's most notorious neighborhoods.
What he did was a pilot. He did a pilot for a year. And what he did was in each one of these areas, he put roughly 5 or 6 what we call violence interrupters in each one of these areas.
The violence interrupters interrupt crime, stopping the cycle by addressing the victims as well as the criminals. But Smith says it's also about having programs in place to get people out of the crime lifestyle.
Really, it becomes an omnipresence and a force multiplier where you have that many more people from different arms of government involved in trying to change the entire community that you're trying to impact.
I am confident the strategy is working.
The results after 1 year were encouraging.
Last year, 2022, an area that's probably two square miles averages about 50 plus murders per year over the last 8 years, had roughly 30 murders last year. So something occurred.
99, 10 in the twin span.
Now Moreno hopes to try the same violence interruption model in New Orleans. But there's a catch.
Unfortunately, some of the figures that I've seen on what a really robust intervention model looks like is anywhere between $25 and $50 million a year. But in my opinion, I think it's absolutely worthwhile because something has to break the cycle.
Moreno says the council's already working with the health department and UMC to build a program model, but she knows there's still a lot of unanswered questions.
How do you really scale it up? And then how are you really identifying the most at-risk individuals, those who are possibly going to be a victim of crime or a perpetrator of crime, and then interrupt that cycle? Because it's more than just having these interrupters out in the community, it's about having the programming on the back end.
Still, she's confident it will come together.
We're going to build it, and I have the commitment. In fact, there's been a directive by the City Council that was unanimously approved by the Council that the Health Department is required to create this violence intervention model.
I think it's a smart thing, but I think it involves a lot of commitment and the ability to really be focused on it and understand there are going to be some wins and there are going to be some losses. It's about the commitment to stay.
While not everything in Baltimore is working, there are certain things that have, and I don't mind stealing good ideas from other people.
An idea she believes will soon become reality. In the fight against violence as so many continue battling for New Orleans. Natasha Robin, Fox 8, Local First.
In Baltimore, they're working to expand the violence interruption model to more areas where crime is still a problem.
Moreno says the model here in New Orleans will likely begin on a small scale and rapidly expand if it nets results.